Hello everyone, this is Brooke, DeFi analyst from TID Research, and then today I'd like to quickly talk about an interesting protocol called Strata. Strata is a tranching protocol built on top of Ethena, USDe, and it's going to be live on Converge chain. The reason why I want to talk about it is because it's introducing a somewhat innovative concept called yield tranching. So when we talk about yield tranching, it means that I'm actually splitting the yield of online yield-bearing assets into two tranches. And the one tranche is more of a senior conservative tranche, and the other one is more of a junior and more aggressive tranche. The reason why we need yield tranching is different group of users in the DeFi market. Some are more aggressive, some are more conservative. By introducing the concept of yield tranching on top of USDe, which is a very popular asset, can therefore expand the use case of and create more user scenario. Any kind of user, from the most aggressive to the most conservative, can find their way to use Ethena. Therefore, this is the reason why Strata can help Ethena to further grow and create synergy. If you're paying attention to the pendulum market, you can see that this PUSDe representing the Strata pre-deposit has already more than 60 million in TVO. And the PTs are, this PT is one of the most popular PT in the DeFi market right now. And people are buying it to deploy into all kind of DeFi market. For example, like a lot of people are buying PT and then to land on Euler to build loop on top of it, to land on Morpho also to build a loop on top of it. Then some people also supply the PT to Termax to borrow with fixed rate, and then therefore to lock in the yield between the fixed rate borrowing and the fixed rate lending, and then to earn the spread. So even before the Strata is like official live, there are a lot of people talking about it and a lot of people interacting with it. So it shows that the market is somewhat excited about this protocol. And I personally also believe that the Strata has like true use case, because through risk tranching, it can further increase the use case of USDe, and therefore more people will be able to include USDe into their portfolio. So now let's discuss what exactly is yield tranching. So if you look at the doc here, you can say that there are going to be two assets live on Strata, which is the STUSDe and the STJLP. So TUSDe is the senior tranche introduced by Strata, and the STJLP is the junior tranche. The full name of the STJLP is the Stake Junior Liquidity Pool. And the JLP here is not the same as the Jupiter Liquidity Pool token. The JLP here means that it's representing the junior tranche. And whenever there's a yield, whenever there's a positive yield, some of it will go to STJLP, some of it will go to STUSDe. So this true tranche will split the yield by holding the online USDe. And the next question is how they're going to split the yield. We need to discuss this question, we need to talk about the function of this two tranche. The reason why we need the STJLP is because the funding rate is not always positive. So from time to time, there's an example where the funding rate actually turned negative, and therefore holding USDe actually costs you money. And in that scenario, STJLP will be first to absorb the loss, which means that a JLP is actually more of a buffer. STJLP was more of a buffer for the STUSD holder. And then therefore, to compensate for the possibility of losing money for the STJLP holders, STUSDe holder agreed to receive lower yield than simply holding the STUSDe, and therefore attract more people to hold STJLP and provide protection for the STUSDe. And so that is how the yield going to be split. So it can be like whenever SUSD earns 10%, 4% will go to STUSDe, and then 6% will go to STJLP. However, and the most interesting part about Strata is that they're not using a fixed yield split. Later on, we'll also talk about Resolv. What Resolv is doing is actually yield tranching. But for Strata, they're doing something called a dynamic yield split. So it means that the split of the yield earned from the online SUSDe is not fixed. It is like changing dynamically. So whenever like there are more STUSDe and then less STJLP, it means that the average protection each unit of STUSD can have from STJLP is thinner. For example, 70% of the yield will go to and 30% go to STUSDe, and therefore create a stronger incentive for STJLP holders. On top of that, when the yield goes to very low, below the sky saving rate, which is like 4.75% right now, 100% of the yield will to STUSDe holders, so as to guarantee they are always earning the floor rates in the DeFi market. And in this case, STJOP holder will not earn anything. And the worst case scenario for the STJOP is first, the funding rate turn negative, and the second is that the funding rate, the yield SUSDE earn goes to very low level, and then the 100% of the yield will goes to STUSDE holders. And that is the risk of STJOP holders, and that's the reason why they tend to get the larger split when the protocol Strata is distributing the yield. Now, we understand how Strata worked. We can compare it with the Resolv. How Resolv works is that they have two token, which is called, they have two yield bearing token, which is first one is called ROP, and then second one is called the USR. 100% of the collateral will be deployed onto the basic trading strategies, like the one you can see here. They're holding the BTC and ETH loan, and then shorting the perps on different kind of the centralized exchanges, and then earning the collateral pool APR here. However, the collateral pool APR is not evenly distributed to all the assets. ROP earns a bit more than the rest of USR holders. And the reason why that is the case because whenever the funding rate turn negative, all will be absorbed by ROP holders. And therefore, during the normal period of time when the funding rate is actually positive, the rest of USR holders need to somewhat compensate the ROP holders and therefore to attract them to keep on bearing the loss to protect the rest of USR holders. So you can see in the last 7 days, collateral pool APR is only like 12%. It means that on average, all the collateral pool yield here is only 12%. However, in the last 7 days, ROP APR is actually close to 16%. So somewhat the built-in leverage for the ROP holders to compensate for the possibility of losing money from simply holding the token. And therefore, you can see for the rest of the USR holder, the last 7 days, the staking APR is actually lower than the APR because they need to pay ROP. The split is 30-70. So it means that the 70% of all the collateral pool yield will be evenly distributed to the USR and ROP holders, and the rest of the 30% will to ROP holders. So this is how the yield is distributed, and so far, it's working okay. However, in the market, a lot of people complain that the yield is actually not distributed dynamically according to the portion of different asset. So for example, like right now, there's like only 1 million of the TVO in ROP, and then there's still like 308 million of the TVO in the USR. And the yield is still distributed in the manner of the 30-70s. It means that out of all the collateral pool, only 30% of the yield are distributed to RP holders, even though they can provide only 1 million worth of protection. So a lot of USR holder right now will be unhappy because how come only 1 million out of all of our TVO is protected? However, we have to give 30% of the yield to the RP holders. That does not really make sense because let's say if the funding rate turns very negative, the 1 million of the TVO will be depleted against the total 310 million of the TVO. So if that is the case, it means that the rest of our TVO, like 307 million, are actually not protected. So why do we need to pay them? So that is one of the biggest shortcoming when we talk about split yield tranching design. And that's the reason why Strata would like to deploy something called dynamic yield split. However, the actual design has not yet been announced. Market is kind of like paying attention to how the Strata will tackle this issue because Resolv, even though they are doing the fixed split, has been pretty successful. Both USR and the ROP are very, very popular among different kind of users. For low risk, stable form user, they prefer rest of USR, and for more trading users, they prefer ROP more. And then, so that's the reason why market expect a lot from Strata, and now they're paying attention to how the Strata will split the yield. But regardless, the direction of Strata indicate that the use case is actually very, very strong. And then the overall, the design is what the market is looking for. They have a strong product market fit, and then create a perfect synergy with Ethena. So overall, you can see that even before the product's live, before it's distributing any yield, there's already like more than 150 million in the deposit, and there are already like close to 70 million TVO on Pendle for people trading their PT and YT. Yeah, so that's a little bit of introduction about Strata.